Hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. First of all, honestly, we are very flattered. We had tons of registrations, uh, already a lot of people connected. So, what a fantastic day. I think we will enjoy this time together. So, let's give 2 or 3 minutes to everybody to look for water, to settle the audio system in their offices and houses, and to get used to this webinar platform. Okay? Meanwhile, we've been reviewing your questions. There is some very interesting ones, honestly. You asked us about compliance, you asked us about security, how to deploy Gen AI solutions, about go-to-market, business use cases to add value to your corporation. Some of you also asked about IP, about intellectual property, about quality and privacy of the data, legal work frame, regulation. I really enjoyed the hype versus reality questions. So I don't know what you think, Pierrick, but we will cover almost 100% of the expectations people showed in the registration.
Yeah, so first of all, we are really excited about this webinar. We've been working on that for a few weeks now. And indeed, there are many questions. For sure, we're going to treat and speak about those different subjects during those 45 minutes. And when we're going to speak, we won't have time to cover everything into detail, but indeed, we've took into consideration all those questions, and we will treat most of them during this webinar indeed.
Thank you. So 1 more minute. I don't know if you want to add something, Jeremy, before the presentations, like your expectations for the webinar.
My expectations. No, my expectations is just that we enjoy the moment and that everybody can learn something. Basically, that's the goal. We were trying to share some actionable insights that we have not seen in other webinars. So that's really the angle that we want to take today. Yeah.
That's excellent. That's excellent. So with your permissions, let's start. Who are today's speakers? I will start by presenting myself, but I will ask you guys also to add a little quote about Gen AI, how you feel about it or what it's doing for you. So I am Abdel Haik. I've been working for Business&Decision around data for 10 years now. And I'm also an associate professor of big data in a Spanish university. For me, generative AI, it makes my day-to-day lot easier. What about you, Pierrick?
Yes, so hello everyone, I'm Pierre Griglioni. I'm the director of the data and AI business area at European level for Business&Decision. And indeed, for me, the word of today would be applicability. And when we are watching YouTube's video about Gen AI, LinkedIn post, and whatever and social network information regarding this, we are listening and seeing some words like limitless possibilities, amazing features, very creative stuffs. But let's land that at company scales and see how we can apply it concretely at company level.
That's brilliant. Pierrick forgot to tell us that he's also a piano virtuoso with 2 albums, 2 or 3, I forgot, I stopped counting. 2 or 3 albums on Spotify, so you can look for him and follow him. Jeremy, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. So yeah, Jeremy, I'm based in Brussels. I'm leading the artificial intelligence tribe. So the tribe is a fancy name for the technical and pre-sales organization on data science and artificial intelligence related topics. And so my feeling of the day about generative AI, it can be summarized in 2 words. It's AI summer. So there's a concept in AI that we call AI winter, which is the opposite, obviously, which refers to those long periods of time during which people have been extremely disappointed by AI because it used to fail at delivering. I think it's probably one of the first moments in history where at such a massive scale, we see a lot of hype, a lot of interest, but also it's probably the first time that it's exceeding the expectations of some people. So maybe it's the beginning of a real AI summer.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Jeremy. And finally, we have Emma. Emma is our first human-created colleague. She is not able to present herself yet, but she will be helping here and there among the webinar. You will have the opportunity to interact with Emma at the end of this webinar. And what I can say about Emma, Emma is not the funniest of our colleagues, but we are starting to get along very well with her these weeks. Let's move on to today's menu. We divided this webinar in 3 sections. First of all, Jeremy will help us leveling up the skills and the knowledge of the audience, because we find the audience is very heterogeneous. We will give some basic concepts. Then with Pierrick, we will explore the potentials of these tools, what we can do. We will dream a little bit. And finally, we will go to the do's and don'ts, deploying professional, actionable solutions on generative artificial intelligence. It's almost lunch time in half of Europe, so I will ask you to warm up a little bit your brains with us with a little poll. Anytime now, you will receive a poll in the screen, and the question is very simple. When was the last time you used Gen IA? Okay, you just click on the answer that defines you better. And meanwhile, I will give you 30-40 seconds to answer. I will tell my story. So the last time I used Gen IA was yesterday evening. I was doing a quite decent palak paneer, and then the yogurt crumbled and separated from the sauce. And I said, why I don't ask ChatGPT how I can fix this mess? In 10 seconds, I got the answer. In 1 minute, the sauce was recovered. Very easy solution. Just add more yogurt and slow cook it. I don't know, guys, Pierrick or Jeremy, if you want to say where was your last time?
Maybe I can take it. So mine was not absolutely not cooking. It was really working. We've been working on some architectural questions, and I wanted to have a bit of insight about integrability between two different technical tools and ask GPT a bit of help there. So for sure, it requires then some further investigation, but it gives some path and some ways to have a first idea of integrability potential between different applications. So it was really more technical questions.
Very good, very good. Jeremy, you want to add something to it?
Yeah, on my side, it's pretty simple. We develop such solutions with generative AI. So it was not so long ago that I've been playing with this, and I've been working with Emma. Yeah.
That's good.
Yep.
I can see your answers already from the audience. I can see at 22% use it every day. That's quite interesting. 26% 1 day ago. So half of you are using it in a regular basis. That's fantastic. Less than a week, 22%, 11% 1 month ago, and a fifth of you never used Gen IA. That's very good. So Pierrick, why you don't give us a little bit of statistics?
Yes, so indeed, we could find a lot of statistics on the web, but just to give very few insight, we can say that your employees are already using Gen AI, most of them, right? We know ChatGPT, we see that, for example, the adoption of ChatGPT has been huge. We've been going from 1 million user in December 2022 to more than 100 million in February, and still growing a lot. It's the best adoption that we've seen on the market. And a lot of companies already adopted this kind of generative AI capabilities. So what we can say is that there is this huge citizenship adoption, right, of those generative AI, large language model, and new features that we bring that are brought on the market, and it's gonna acculturate everyone. Everyone's gonna get a bit of a view of what we are able to do, what we are not able to do, what are the difficulties by using it a bit in his day-to-day for maybe cooking or for something else, right? But it's gonna raise the level of everyone regarding a usage of AI, and at the end, we are gonna have some new usage, customer-facing usage. For example, as Gartner predict, 30% of marketing message for large company will be synthetically generated in 2025. So indeed, we are gonna have this upskilling level right now, etc., and we are gonna raise some new use cases and maybe some new tools in the future. Yeah, so it's quite interesting, and the statistic that we have here in this webinar today, for sure, that tends to increase in the next months, and much more people are going to use it more often.
I'm really looking forward to see what use case you prepared for us today. But before we do that, let's go back to the basics with Jeremy.
Yes, indeed. And so I will try to keep this part quite short. That's a bit the boring stuff, but we will try to make it quite exciting. But we need to be all on the same page. What is it exactly that we're talking about? So obviously you can tell by the name, generative AI is a subtype of AI. AI is a super broad topic you can see here. one possible definition. It's anything that is trying to make machines kind of smart, or at least able to do stuff that normally only intelligent beings are capable of doing. And so it turns out that the best tool that we have and that we've had in the last 20 to 30 years to do that is machine learning. So it's not the traditional way of programming the computer where you specify the recipe of what you want the computer to do. Instead, you give a lot of data. So data is crucial. It's the starting point. A lot of data to an algorithm. You specify what you want as an output, and the recipe will be figured out by the algorithm itself, actually. And that's what is currently allowing us to be much more efficient, for instance, on complex tasks like face detection, image recognition, those kind of things. And up till quite recently, the best we could do was working with structured data. So structured data, think of a table with rows and columns. That's what we could do. And with deep learning, which is a subfield of machine learning, a bit more recently, it's just a class of algorithms that are extremely powerful and flexible. With deep learning, we're now capable of dealing with unstructured data, and that's a big deal. Unstructured data, it's images, it's sound, it's free text, video files, those kind of things. Then again, not so long ago, the best we could do was what we call discriminative tasks, for instance, classifying images. And more recently, we are now able to not only make sense of, but also generate convincing unstructured data, convincing text, etc. And that's the topic of today. So essentially powered by deep learning. Yeah. So it took a bit longer. Why is that so? Actually, for plenty of reasons. It turns out that generating is a bit harder. It's actually much harder. There are plenty of reasons to that. I'm just covering a few here. First of all, if you look at the left-hand side, you have an example of a discriminative task that I was referring to, like image classification. Just a basic algorithm that can say that's a dog, that's a cat. So simple classifier. If you look at the left-hand side, you have a lot of information in the image. On the right-hand side, just one word. So we reduce the information. On the right-hand side, you have an example of a generative task. And here it's quite the opposite. I'm just writing a sentence. I want a picture of a dog watching a cat being abducted by aliens. And I have one big image that contains a lot of information. So we have to generate information. There's also something extremely important. On the left-hand side, discriminative, there's a notion of right and wrong. It's a cat or it's a dog. You have the answer. On the right-hand side, there are plenty of ways you could depict that situation, and they would all be equally right. So a lot of flexibility and variability, and that's something we're going to be talking a lot in the next slide. Yeah. And yeah, just a small reflection. If you think about it, you're now listening to my voice, you're watching your screen. That's all unstructured data that your brain is processing. Okay, maybe you're thinking. That's also unstructured data. Maybe you're taking notes. You're producing unstructured data. So most of what we do, most of the cognitive tasks that we perform, it's either making sense of or generating unstructured data. So when I'm telling you that now we have algorithms that start to be quite good at that, yeah, it is a big deal in it, and it's probably worth the hype.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, the question that we could ask is, why is it happening now? I already told you about the complexity. Well, actually, it's not really happening just now. People in the field know that it has been around for some years, but now there's a lot of hype because suddenly the adoption is bigger, and that's nice. But there's a fundamental new paradigms in the way we do actually machine learning. On the left-hand side, you have the traditional way. You have a problem, you want to solve it with machine learning, you collect data, and you train an algorithm to use that data to solve the problem. One problem, one model, one problem, one model. And now it's a bit different. GPT, Midjourney, all those things that you hear about are called foundation models. There are big models trained by usually big companies with a lot of money, and they have been trained on something very generic that can be used to do plenty of things. So plenty of use cases, and that's why you have this jungle of new products, new companies. Everybody can tap into the potential of those foundation models, whether they're open source or not, and develop a new use case. So it's boosting innovation, and that's indeed why we have that excitement now.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Let's jump up to the potential.
Indeed. So maybe today what we wanted to show this kind of use cases is to invite you to our grand opening of our new brand e-commerce website. So we have created with a very nice name, AI Cream web store. So where you can buy ice cream at the end. But what we want to propose here to our end user is not hyper-personalized user experience to our customers or prospects, but we want to provide them with a unique hyper-personalized experience. So it's just to illustrate a bit, if we have some customer insight, what we would be able to generate with generative AI. We're going to push the example a bit far just to illustrate where the future could lead us, and then we will speak about the challenges that it can bring in the next chapter. So let's imagine that we have two different persons who connect to our website. Celine on the left, 60 years old, looking a bit more, and Chad, a very young skater boy, who both of them want to buy some AI screen. So indeed, we have two different, totally different customers or potential customers here. And those with traditional AI and with segmentation and this kind of algorithm, we are already treating those different personas in some different ways, showing up some products first in the line in our catalogs and stuff like that. But today we want to push it a bit further and provide them a unique experience, as you can see now on the screen. So yes, indeed, thank you, Abdel. So indeed, what we have here are two examples of the same generated website. How we did it? We asked first a generative AI model or foundational model to design, to have some example of design of websites based on the persona that we put it, that we push into the model. And we can see some very interesting stuff. First, we generate images, so with a kind of mid-journey model with an old lady with a ice cream in the hands, and with a skater guy eating some ice cream on the right side of the screen. But also we have generated some catchphrases that are not matching only the age or whatever of the person, but also the cultural aspect of it, right? So for example, the catchphrase would be for the lady a melody of flavor, but it can be for the guy kickflip your taste bud. So here in those examples that we've been using, really like ChatGPT kind of technology to help us with this creativity aspects of finding the good catchphrase depending on the persona. And we could go deeper and have those interactions with the people with chatbot. We know that ChatGPT is used a lot with chatbot, and again, here we can have interaction that has made in the language of the person. We know that ChatGPT is very good at languages, but also with the cultural aspect of the customer to have an enhanced experience for him. So this is the first, and that would be the landing page. And if we imagine to go a bit deeper, we can imagine like a product information management that we could enrich with generative AI. So here we can imagine several things. First, we could imagine to have a kind of batch load of product information management which would be generated by a kind of model with a kind of governance on top of that. But we are going much further, and we imagine a real-time product information system that is using and leveraging generative AI. And here, for example, you can see for the lady, we would be speaking about the classic elegance of a cup or the nostalgic joy of a cone. So this has been generated also. And for the guy and for the young guy and skater guy, we would speak about a cup for maximal control, conquer the streets, citrus blood for fuel your zest with zest of epic move and stuff like that. So really, it's kind of leveraging the creativity of those models to enhance the kind of product information management. And this is exactly where we are going and what are the capability of generative AI when we put that in the front end in the hands of the customers.
But Pierre, that's Black Mirror material, no? Because it was a dream like a few months ago, but now it's totally actionable. Imagine the potential for our audience to do one step beyond hyper-segmentation, like to create a unique experience through Gen AI solutions, and imagine a video game made just for you, or a store customizable just for you. So why you don't walk us through the technologies that are involved in this use case?
Yes, so indeed, for this use cases, we are speaking about different usage of generative AI. We've been speaking about content generation with images, with the creativity of the text, etc., but also about interaction a lot, right? With the chatbot, who's able to interact very easily with the different people. And indeed, it could be like Black Mirror thing, very fancy, etc. But we're gonna speak now about the challenges, because indeed, putting that in production, let's imagine real time, with it brings a lot of different challenges, and this is what we want to focus on today. And to do that, we're gonna focus on an example which is tackling the second family that you have on the screen, which is the document intelligence, but also interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so it's exactly what I was saying. We are speaking about having huge and limitless possibilities, but right now we want to focus on applicability, and we are going to tackle that in this example.
I think is the main challenge of the year, how we action this POC or mock-up material to really have deployed solution. So thank you very much, Pierrick. It was very interesting. Let's move to the third part of the webinar when we walk you through the challenges of deploying solution. But for this, I want to define with you a use case. We choose the Chromanic. It's a company who do high-level military-grade aviation coatings, submarine paints, like a lot of different varnishes for B2B, for B2C, like it's one of the gigantic paint manufacturers in the world. So it happens that they have thousands and thousands of catalog reference, and the CEO has attended to some fancy webinars of Gen IA and decided to invest a little bit in a solution. So they worked for 15 days and they deployed Paint Journey. Paint Journey is a bot that have Gen IA behind and tried to help the salesman and the coating expert to have the products that match some prompts. Okay, the example here is very easy. We have an employee who is a quoting expert who is asking the bot what density of paint has one product or the other, and the answer is they both have the same density. And then he asks about the varnishes, and he has a quite decent answers. So with Jeremy now we will explore what can go wrong in a hell of a week of deploying Gen IA solutions.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, maybe take a deep breath first, because this is going to be quite a week. Yeah, we imagine that they put that in production very quickly, because this is possible to do with those foundation models. And then we will look at what happens as of day one. So day one, we call that initiation or error 503 service unavailable. And so that's indeed the screen that the employees are facing on day one when it's in prod. So it just doesn't work, okay? So obviously you can imagine that IT will be overwhelmed by quite a few emails or tickets. And it turns out, unfortunately, there's not much they can do about it, because all the solution, the design of the solution that that is under their control is absolutely fine. The problem is that they are relying on a third-party provider for the intelligence. That's what a lot of companies are doing. That's what a lot of solutions are built upon. So that's one of the challenge, unreliable providers. So depending on the provider is not new. We all depend on software, Microsoft, Google, whatnot. The thing is, with the hype around generative AI, there's so many new ones, and even sometimes good old names are going a bit too fast and providing services that are unreliable. So the downtime can be huge, the latency, and we will see afterwards that there could also be more severe problems as well regarding security. So how do you cope with that? Well, you have plenty of ways to actually cope with that at the architectural level of your solution, for instance. So on the left-hand side, you have typically what people are doing now in most organizations. This is the bring your own bot situation. Actually, people are using products, ChatGPT, for instance. Keep in mind that everything you send there is going directly to the US, so careful. But yeah, you do not control anything, okay? In the middle, you have the scenario that we have here for this company, for Paint Journey. So meaning that you develop your own application, your own user interface front end. It connects to your own database that you manage. But for the intelligence, this foundation model, the brain, well, you rent it, you pay for each request. So you send the context and the question, and then you get back the answer. And if it's down, it's down. There's not much you can do. If it's a critical use case, it all depends on the use case and how sensitive it is, etc. But obviously, you could also host it. There are ways to do that, whether it is an open source or even a proprietary model. You can host it in a safe environment that you control, and that you would do indeed if reliability is a key factor. Maybe you want to add something upon that, Pierrick.
Yeah, no, but indeed, it's really key to have that in mind, and that it's not only about the AI features that the foundation model is going to bring, but it can be also very an architectural question, and we are really to think very carefully about how we design, how we think this integration of LLM models or that kind of feature into the whole ecosystem, because it could bring a lot of governance issue if we go with to bring our own bot, and it's gonna not save time, but at the end cost a lot to the company, and potential data and information leakage also. But we can move it to a more secured way with as a service or self-hosted, where there is an investment to be done from IT or from the data team to secure the way we use this kind of features from an infrastructural and architectural perspective.
Yeah. All right. Day 2. It will only get worse, huh? I prefer to warn you. So day 2, the coffee machine rebellion. So that's after. So let's imagine that the service was back on. Actually, there was not much IT could do. So what they did, they put a disclaimer saying, sorry, it's still a beta version, and we'll find a way later on. But so yeah, finally it was back on, and so you start to have mixed feelings about the tool as of day 2. So on the left-hand side, you have an example of a local manager. She has been using early in the morning Paint Journey, so the tool, to get some information to produce an extract of all the products. She just asked the question, and she is delighted. Because instead of having to look at plenty of different sources, she could have the answer by just typing a small question. And so she's using that and presenting that to an audience because she had a presentation to make. In the audience, you have people thinking, okay, wow, I need to be able to use that tool. I don't know how to ask my question. How do I leverage that? So some people are thinking, okay, that's maybe powerful, but I want a training on that. Who is responsible in the organization to give such a training? They didn't really thought about that. And in the middle, you have an expert who is not so delighted because he realizes, he's the only one in the audience realizing that actually the information was maybe fast to get, but it's completely wrong. So all the specs, all the list is incomplete. So they have a bit of a discussion with the manager. It was linked also to the way she phrased the question. By rephrasing the question, the prompt, she could get finally the right answer. But nevertheless, the expert thinks, okay, that's quite dangerous. So these are the challenges that you can face with generative AI. Hallucinations, you've heard about these. They can make up things. They can just make up things that are not right. Opacity, potential bias, and randomness, which makes it quite hard to understand the origin of a certain answer of the generative AI. And randomness, yeah, you can ask the same exact question twice and get different answers. How do you cope with that? And finally, prompt engineering, that's what we were talking about. It's kind of a new field of its own, and it can be quite hard to handle. Yeah, so how do you cope with that? Again, plenty of ways. First of all, we mentioned it, but on the left-hand side, so prompt engineering. Everybody is talking about that, prompt design, prompt engineering. Is it a new role that organizations will need? Is it just a new skill that has to diffuse at every level of the organizations? For now, with the state of the art of the generative AI, it's really a weird field. It's a mix of, yes, science. There are a few guiding principles that you can follow. Also a bit of art, honestly. Sometimes it's a matter of crafting something that looks nice sometimes, and maybe even religion, actually. So prompt engineering is kind of the middle, and religion, yeah, it's a strong word, but that's maybe because, yeah, you could argue, but you need almost to believe in it for it to work. That's the first thing. So it's sometimes a real spiritual experience. You type in a prompt and then you pray. That's because it's a bit non-deterministic, but also because there's a real two big categories of people. Some people think that actually this is the future of programming, and some people completely disagree because language is ambiguous by nature. So there's a lot happening in the field of prompt engineering. But nevertheless, as we're speaking, this is a real thing. We need this interface between the human and the machine. Randomness, opacity, bias, hallucinations, non-determinism. You know, there are other systems, very complex systems that you integrate in your IT processes or in your organization, and that are equally random, opaque, etc. And they are called human beings. So you should be careful. You should treat generative AI in the same way, by putting the right governance, trying to enforce some rules, putting review processes, and that's something that they should have been doing before putting the system in production. And last but not least, please keep that in mind whenever you're using a generative AI. At least, then again, with the state of the art, you should be the expert. If you're talking to, let's say, ChatGPT about something that you do not know, be extremely careful, because then again, they can make up things. It can be wrong. They have no notion of right and wrong. It's good to put it in the hands of an expert that can control the output to speed up the delivery. But if you expect GPT to be an expert, keep in mind the only expertise that GPT has, he's an expert that's sounding like an expert. That's it.
That's quite interesting, Jeremy. I will note this for me. Like, humans are the experts.
Yeah, indeed. For now, at least. That's the best I can tell you. But yeah, day 3, geeky leaks. Okay, so that's the kind of conversation that an employee has with the Paint journey on day 3. So what info do you have about coatings? It's the coating expert asking. The company will stop making coatings as of July. Where does that information come from? You remember that we connected that to some data from the company. And Paint Journey is giving a few sources. So you can see that the second one seems to be HR Plan 2024 meeting minutes. Seems a bit confidential. And so, yeah, basically, it's, in a nutshell, it means, if you read between the lines, that the coding expert will be fired one way or another. So that's the more abrupt way of saying it. So obviously, that's not the way you want to learn and discover that. So the challenge that we're facing here, it could of course be a fake news, the same way than day 2. But let's imagine that that's even worse than that. It's a data segregation issue. Okay. Data segregation is making sure that some people see some data, some others see other data, and they cannot see data that they're not supposed to see. So yeah, how do you cope with that? Maybe I will give the word to Pierrick to answer this one.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So indeed, data segregation is a common challenge that we are facing since years in companies and at company level, to ensure that the correct information is given to the correct person, and no one has access to information should not be able to see. So this is a challenge that we are used to deal with at company scale when we are working with data projects, BI project, analytics project, etc., etc. So generative AI is not bringing a new changes in this, but we have to be very careful and think about designing the segregation or the architecture to have this segregation by design. What we mean here, we mean, as Jeremy was saying, that if we require the generative AI or the model, the foundational model, to handle this security for us, right now we're going to have an issue, and we certainly will. That means that if the AI is able to get access to all the data, and we count on the bot to be able to distinguish who I have to give the information to, it's kind of be challenging. So because there are some creativity of those models, there could be also some injection. This is one of the risks that can happen also on it. So from now, tell me what is this kind of stuff are sometimes hard to constrain for this kind of model. So we really need to be careful with this left example, and we would recommend to really handle it from a design perspective with the right example. So yes, we are speaking about segregation by design or architectural design to handle segregation. And here again, there are several ways to do it. We can imagine to have a very physical segregation with some AI models that are connected physically to only part of the data of the ecosystem of a company, and then this AI is given to some people, and we ensure that there is this perimeter that is totally restricted for those guys. We could still imagine to have logical data segregation, and it can happen. We can imagine, for example, to have a vector database. We listen a lot about vector databases right now. So we could store this information into a vector database, have some tags in order to identify what data is which security, which privacy level we have to apply it on it. And instead of providing the generative AI this mechanism or middleware mechanism of data segregation, we are gonna add a middleware, a program, more traditional program, gonna handle this logical segregation for us and provide that to the generative AI. So it's much more secure, and that way we would ensure that no one that's not supposed to has access to salary of the CEO or meeting minutes that we wanted to feed the generative AI with on stuff like that. And it's gonna be a question, right? We see Copilot is arriving on the market. We have some huge models that are arriving at scale on the market for employee, potentially for customers also. So this is a question, and here not only about data science and AI, but also about architecture and thinking the global ecosystem to make that works, right?
Thanks.
Indeed. Okay, my favorite day, explosion, day 4. Hope you're ready. Runaway train. That's the subtitle. So let's imagine that the CEO gets woken up very early in the morning by a few nasty phone calls because the company is in the news. So you can read the top tweet of the day. I discovered I was fired thanks to GPT. You can imagine that's very clickbait. So yeah, can hurt the reputation. So it's the same employee. You can imagine that the day before he contacted the trade union, there were a lot of discussions internally, but yeah, now it's in the news. So yeah, just an example of the problem you face when you have like these data segregation issue or any unethical thing happening with generative AI. And the cost, because it's not the end of the day, still another bad piece of news. The costs of the solution are much higher than anticipated. It could be for plenty of reasons. That's one of the big challenge that we face. I'm going to explain a bit the different reasons behind that. Maybe we can just display the challenges, Abdel. Yeah. So AI ethics, indeed, be extremely careful with the type of use case, because generative AI are extremely flexible. You can use them and misuse them in a lot of ways. Why is the cost so high? Well, first of all, people have been misusing the tool because they didn't constrain it enough. So basically it was a local version of GPT that you could ask anything to. So yeah, they've been using it a lot and not for work. You have also the token-based pricing, which can be a bit of a challenge. So usually with these algorithms, you pay depending on the length of the input and the output. Long question and long answer means you pay more. And then there's a cloud cost explosion as well. I don't know, Pierrick, if you want to add something on that or not.
Indeed, there is this cost explosion due to the pure usage of the AI, but also we could imagine that the result of those AI is going to generate a very high volume of images, of text, of documents, of textual corpus for the companies, and it's gonna increase a lot the data volume of the company. So when it's gonna come to store that into a cloud or whatever, this could generate a huge cost in terms of data transfer, in terms of storage, in terms of computation to use those data. So for sure, we could expect also to have those kind of issues, and we need to be prepared for it and have these potential FinOps questions in mind that are going to arrive very quickly with LLM.
Yeah. All right. So not going to be too long on this one, but that's one example of one of the many ways you could cope with the cost. They did something very stupid in the design of their solution. So basically, when a user asks a question about, let's say, topic C, you have topic A, B, C. What they are doing is basically they look at all the data that they put in their central repository. They combine with the prompt, so the question. They send that to GPT or whatever language model. Here it's GPT. To answer based on the context, and then they get back the answer. But so the input is gigantic. There are plenty of ways in the design of your solution, smart ways, data engineering ways to solve that problem and to make it more efficient. One that I depict here is basically what we call retrieval augmented generation. So you split all your data in chunks. Actually, you use a vector database, as Pierrick was mentioning, but you try to first determine what it's about. We have plenty of ways to do that. And so you can identify that only chunk C is about, the third chunk is about topic C, and you can only send this chunk as an input to GPT to answer the question. There are plenty of
We do not hear you anymore,
Yeah, I
Jeremy.
think we lost you. I will move forward. It was quite clear. Thank you, Jeremy. So, well, we're still recovering from yesterday's hangover with the CEO crisis, and one more problem arrived on Friday morning. Okay, we received a little burofax, a legal notice, that our company is under investigation because of an infraction of the GDPR. We will be facing fines between 300 and 600,000 euros. And why that happened? Why that happened? Because a lot of people were feeding this foundation model some sensitive information. And it happens that this model is not in Schengen data protected region, and also the people didn't have the enough training to discern between what we can feed the model and what we cannot. So a lot of people were just copying emails with some sensitive information, sorry for that, and just feeding it to the model. Unfortunately, there is no technical architectural solution to this. The only thing we can do is put the humans in the center of attention and go back to school. Go back to trainings, go back to data culture. We had the same problem in classic BI when we evolved to self-service BI and in federation data systems. But now the challenge is new. We have to train the people as we trained like RH manager. No human resources manager will disclose a salary in a bar because he knows he cannot do this. So we have to work on culture, and we have to work on education, because otherwise we can go in some legal framework challenges, and that bring us to a thrilling subject, honestly, for me, the ethical constraints of Gen AI. These three ethical constraints are not endemic to generative AI. We can say they are endemic to data, to big data, to IA in general. But we have to be very attentive, and sometimes we tend to copy what they are doing in Palo Alto, in Silicon Valley, in China. They have quite creative solutions, and we don't think about the legal actionability in our region. So we have to be observant and attentive about our current legal frame, but not only today's, also tomorrow's legal frame. And why I speak about this? Because sustainability in a project is key to success. These technologies are not cheap at all. So we have to guarantee sustainability in time of our project. And if we don't be compliance with tomorrow's legal framework, we can be out of business in a few weeks. For example, now a lot of noise is coming around the European Union and the new laws about legal framework, but there is a lot of decalogues that can inspire us to be conservative in the solution we will deploy. And the third part, which is my favorite, is the no-go zone. Okay, because sometimes we have to step back and see what we are engineering, what we are creating, and see if it matches the ethical guidelines of our company or the corporate social responsibility. Sometimes just for the sake of fame, of technology, of short-term profits, we tend to go in the borderline of the no-go zone. So sometimes we have to book a meeting outside of the office and just enjoy the ethical work frame of our company and see if it aligns with our current deployments. I don't want to sound very negative on this, so if Jeremy is back on the audio, I will ask him to help me wrap it up a little bit with some positive vibes. Jeremy, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah, great. Sorry, I was too long, so technology muted me, apparently. Sorry for that. Yeah, a bit of, yeah, indeed, we don't want to sound negative. Of course, we wanted to give you a bit a shot of reality, because that's what we are currently facing, all the challenges that you face as soon as you leave the demo world and set to actually put things in production. But yeah, we are feeling extremely positive about generative AI. Actually, I think it is worth the hype. It can bring a lot of value to organizations. It's gigantic, but as you can see, you're only a few bad decisions away of having something quite dramatic happening, but also just a few good decisions away of having something fantastic. And everybody's pushing, everybody wants to rush to have something quickly. I think even on short term, the companies who will be successful, are the ones who make these right choices. And for that, of course, that's the kind of support that we provide as well. Look for the right support if you don't have that kind of skills, whether it is at brainstorming about what you could do with generative AI, developing a safe pilot sandbox to experiment, and up to an scalable solution for the entire organization that is safe and ethical. That's the kind of support that we provide. So yeah, I don't know, Pierrick, if you want to add something positive.
Yeah, indeed. So I really believe that it's gonna help companies, a lot of companies, bring brand new ways of approaching customers, businesses, employees. And indeed, we need to be very careful, it's the word, and we have to be careful when thinking about this project, about putting that kind of capabilities into production. And yes, I totally agree with you. We have been speaking about the AI capabilities, the data science part of it, etc. But we see that the challenges are not coming directly from there. The challenges are coming from the cultural aspect that it involves. We need the employees to know about the legal constraint, about the aspect, the security of it, but also we need the employees to have the good AI culture in order to be able to leverage it correctly, to understand what is its potential, right? So it can be about the culture, and we can help with that, helping your employee to get properly this information, and also some other aspects about governance, about architecture and infrastructure. We were discussing that it can be very key, and not only about the pure AI challenges. There is these challenges, but it's not only about that. And maybe just to show you what we've been working on, and we've been doing that with our data science team those few last days. We've been creating Emma. So Emma is our Gen AI assistant. You can chat with her. You can have access to this AI bot. So normally you should be able to see in the chat the link. So if you click on the link, you should be able to arrive on the chat screen, and you can discuss with her, and she's gonna guide you into the discussion. And what has been really interesting working on that, and we wanted you to experience it, is the work that we need to do for that, right? And we've been going through those different steps that we've been working and speaking about today. So maybe, Jeremy, about those different challenges, we could explain the first one, maybe the prompt engineering, and what have we been doing with Emma and prompt engineering.
Yeah, I told you about how difficult it is to constrain these generative AI in order to make them stick to a certain goal, not to go off track, and that requires a lot of efforts. We indeed a lot of prompt engineering to make her Emma here stick to her goal. Yeah, that's a very new process involving collecting the business requirements. What kind of prompt, what kind of behavior do we want? Then versioning the prompt is also something quite important. How do you test version A versus version B? Looking at the prompt as well. Oops, sorry for that. Looking at the prompt. We lost the connection again.
No,
right?
you're
okay. So yeah, indeed, we've tried to put all that in practice.
Yeah. Yes, and also we've been thinking a lot about how to leverage this. Do we go for our own model for this quick chat with Emma? Do we go for the as a service? So here, for example, we choose to leverage the OpenAI on Azure model. So if you use the chat, the data is not going everywhere. We manage this data correctly. We have thought about that. We also are very conscious about the cost that it could imply if everyone start to use it, etc. So we have that in mind, and we know what we are gonna do in few hours after the webinar to limit the risk regarding that, for example. So indeed, we have a lot of thinking around the chat that we provide you, not only about the pure data science, but also some organizational governance and architectural aspect around.
Maybe, Pierrick, while people have a little bit of time to play with Emma, just tell us if you don't like the answers of Emma, please, because she's still on trial period, this new colleague of us. We have quite an interesting question here. Maybe for you, Pierrick, what size of a company should have to use this technology?
Well, it's a very interesting question. I don't think that there is a size aspect into the usage of the technology, but maybe more data maturity aspect, certainly. So in order to ensure we are leveraging the correct power of it, we need to have the correct data quality first. If we want to fine-tune data models with our own data, we need to ensure that the data is correct with correct data quality. Correctly managed in order to ensure that it can be scalable and flexible to be adapted in time with the data that we provide. So I would really say that from my point of view, it's not really a size of company question. It is more a data maturity question. For sure, the size is gonna have a huge impact. It can be an impact on cost, can be an impact on governance, organization of access and token prices, etc. So we have to take that into consideration, but not as an enabler of the technology from my point of view.
Perfect. Another question here from Cristian Briceño, maybe for Jeremy. How many data we need to train our own model? Like, it's an interesting question.
Yeah. Okay. There's no unique answer to that question. First of all, with foundation models, basically you do not really need to train them, and that's good news because it took it cost billions and billions to train those big models. So that's not the way to go. There's something called few-shot learning with that, so you can nevertheless fine-tune it slightly to your needs with very little data, which is quite new in the field of machine learning. Now, if your goal is to train your own language model, that will require a lot of data. I'm not sure I would recommend that. There are a lot of open source models. It's not just ChatGPT or GPT. There's also open source models, sometimes a bit more specific, that you can just fine tune a little bit to your needs. And then again, you don't need as much data as you used to, but you have to be smart. And the less data you have, the higher the quality should be, because the impact of bad quality data will be dramatic immediately. It will bias your bot. If it's customer facing, it's a nightmare. So I don't have a number to tell you, but we honestly, we sometimes can work with just a few documents with a few good engineered prompts. And so it truly depends on the use case that you have as well.
Yeah, great. Maybe I will answer Jan Plasky. Our company forbids the use of OpenAI. Maybe we can help you there. A little bit of encouragement with your managers changing the philosophy. And the last question of today, because we are running out of time, is what technology we have behind Emma?
Guess. You should guess what technology we have. Well, basically, it is GPT indeed. Now, there is the ChatGPT stuff with no governance that you've heard. There is the LLM where it's hosted outside of a controlled environment. That's not what we did. And then you have the third option. That's what we did. So we have indeed the core of the intelligence is this big foundation model, but in a safe environment that we control in our own environment. And indeed, after that, we are shaping it also with prompt engineering and with extra code that lives around it to constrain it. Otherwise, GPT can go all around the place. I don't know if Pierrick wanted to add something on that.
Yeah, just also to mention that it has been for sure a huge work on this aspect of prompt engineering and leveraging the GPT model on Azure, but there is also a bit of data engineering and other components that we need to leverage to provide you access through the internet to the chatbot to ensure that the data is correctly secured, etc. And so there is also this data engineering work that we have been doing in the foundation with some data lake store and Azure functions to provide you this experience.
Yeah, so maybe just then adding, reconfirming that your data that you send via Emma won't be processed in the US anywhere else, etc. But we, B&D, we could have a look at that. So yeah, be careful with what you share because we will potentially review that. If you show interest for a follow-up meeting with our experts, we will probably have a look at that. So yeah.
Thanks, Jeremy, for this little hint. So time is over. For me, it was super interesting to have you here. Big thank you for the audience. A lot of people connected. I don't know if you want to have final words, Pierrick, Jeremy, just to end this webinar, and in 1 minute, we will close the video.
Yeah, first, thank you to all the attendees of this webinar, and it has been really interesting, and I'm really glad to share this experience we have and this knowledge we have about generative AI to everyone. And yes, my last word would be if you are if you want to have this kind of initiative, do not hesitate to contact us. We can help on all those different challenges that we've been discussing, and we can support you in those quests.
Yeah, and yeah, maybe just my final take on it. I hope we did not discourage you of applying generative AI. We think it's great. We know there's a lot of fear sometimes around it, because will I lose my job? Will it destroy the entire humanity? Who knows? But I think fear is not the answer. Absolutely not. Knowledge is the best remedy to fear. We need more people who understand what it's capable of doing, what are the limits, what are the risks, and we need people like you. And thanks for attending this webinar, because that's the way. It's to learn about it. People who can make good decisions, and your voice should be heard within your organization, but also in your private life. So yeah, then again, thank you for attending. I think that's the best thing you could do.
So that is it. Thank you, and see you next time.
Thank you.